Hi, welcome to Let's Talk About Sex, really. I'm Dr. Alisa Kriegel. So excited to be back. Thank you for tuning in. Today's topic is one of my favorites, I have to say. It is about fit, but I'm not talking about fit with a partner like personality. Is there an emotional fit? Is there a spiritual fit? I'm talking physical fit. And I'm not even talking chemistry. I'm just talking size, genital size. This is something I haven't seen talked about a lot, written about a lot. So I'm excited to share this with you. So I'm going to jump right in with a true story to introduce this topic. I had I had ended my marriage. And after about 2 years of kind of figuring out if I was ready to jump into the dating pool again, and by again, I mean after 25 years, I was about 47 years old and hadn't dated or slept with anyone other than my husband since I was 20. 47, 20, you can do the math. And I decided that part of dating was that I had to get comfortable with sex. And because I had never really been comfortable, especially with intercourse specifically, I really wanted to sort of just be able to have sex, feel comfortable in my body easily. While there is a lot of what I'd call magical thinking in dating and sex, I didn't think this was such a tall order. I'd been practicing on my own. I was feeling more confident. And everything actually was going fine with this guy who I will affectionately term Mr. Big. So we're having great conversation. I'm feeling pretty comfortable. And then the clothes come off and his penis looks really large. But I have to say, having not been with anyone other than my ex for over 25 years, I didn't really have a great sense of what penises look like of different sizes. And the truth is, when you're in a relatively sexless marriage, at least for us, we weren't naked a lot. I couldn't pick my ex's penis out in a lineup. Let's just say that. So I really had no idea. And so we get to the intercourse part and it's not working. His penis is not going in. I thought my vagina was on lockdown. Like it was not barely getting in. So I felt kind of embarrassed, pretty freaked out, and assumed there was something really wrong with me. So after I left and on my walk home, I was convinced I had some sort of sexual disorder, that I was not able to have sex. And I vaguely remembered a video or lecture about in grad school about sexual disorders, and one called vaginismus. So I looked that up, and basically it's when if there's trauma or stress, the vagina literally does just sort of clamp down and shut down, and it's protective and it's totally normal. And it's fairly easy treatment, at least if that's what I had, where you relax, you practice relaxation and breathing and insert in a more formal treatment dilators, which are sort of like, phallic shaped tools that you put inside. I had read you could just use fingers. So you sort of progress 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger. You get the idea. Anyway, I felt more comfortable and went on to experiment and have sex more comfortably throughout the year, but also got more comfortable with letting people know that I had what's called a tilted uterus. And I had researched that and found positions that work better. You want a more shallow penetration. And so with that, I was feeling much more comfortable. Fast forward a year later, and Mr. Big texts, as for some reason people seem to do, right? Like you went out with someone and then you don't talk to them, it didn't work out, but somehow you're not meeting people, or you're like, hey, what happened to that one? So we ended up getting together again. He was curious about my story. We had talked a lot, and I was kind of curious if I cured myself and I could now have sex comfortably and kind of have a do-over. So we got together, and of course, same thing. Except this time, the difference was I knew it wasn't me. And I also had some means for comparison. And what I realized is, holy shit, this guy was ginormous. I'd been with a lot of different men for that year, and he was like off the charts. Like what kind of luck that was my first attempt to get back on the horse, literally and figuratively. So what was interesting is I shut it down. I was like, this isn't going to work. But we talked after, and the conversation after was basically about, it was like, you're really big. And our conversation was a more honest one about his difficulty finding partners. In fact, I think he said there was like only one woman he'd been with who could actually fit him. So, a lot of interesting things. First, why did I assume the problem was me, right? And I think that for a lot of women, that's an assumption. If sex isn't working, we often take responsibility. So I think the other assumption that I made, at least, and I think it's a cultural one that's not not unfamiliar to any of you listening, is this assumption that women want a giant penis. So when you see someone who's giant, like, it never dawned on me, well, it didn't dawn on me how big he was, but also why that would be an issue. And even men, I think, talk a lot about the importance of size, right? There's a lot of sort of male ego. Men will feel insecure if they're more average size or smaller than average. I even remember, I thought it was pretty funny, this past year, I think it were 2 years ago, Pete Davidson from Saturday Night Live was dating Ariana Grande. And New York Magazine had an article about him, and there was a term, big dick energy. And they said he had that, like this sort of swagger and confidence that only comes from having a really big dick. So this is what sort of the narrative is in our culture, right? Women want a big dick. Men want to have one, of course, right? But the truth is something so different. First, here's this guy who can't find a partner. And I've talked with other men, if you're listening or if you have someone with this issue, there's actually some really great products. There's a new one that I have recommended to several people called the O-Nut, O-H-N-U-T, like donut without the D, which is sort of like these rubber round discs that you put on the penis, and it allows there to be less of the penis going into the vagina for penetration. Take a look. If this is an issue that you or your partner have, I highly recommend it. But the other thing that I realized in the following year is I came across this article about the Kama Sutra. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the Kama Sutra. It's the Indian text that's all about lovemaking and sexuality. And there's these very artistic depictions of people having sex in very acrobatic ways. Seem kind of impossible, a lot of them, but entertaining. And so the Kama Sutra is kind of known for the sex positions. What I didn't know is there's this smaller chapter in the Kama Sutra that's all about fit. And the idea of it is that men and women's genitals come in different sizes, and they basically name the sizes according to animals. So for men, the sizes would be small hare, like a rabbit, medium bull, large would be horse. For the women, it's deer, mare, and then elephant. So not the most flattering image, but deer, mare, and elephant. And the whole point is that one size isn't better than the other. It doesn't matter what size you are. But what matters, and in fact, what the Kama Sutra talks about as the ultimate sexual satisfaction, is that the partner's genitals match. So that, you have a medium size vaginal opening with a medium-sized bull. Now, what's also important is they're talking about these sizes. It's not just length, right? We always hear jokes in the culture about how big being length, but there's also girth and width and shape, and all of it affects the fit. So I just loved this, because what I had found is that the men who I had the most pleasurable sex with were really more on the average size, or probably even smaller than average, which sort of makes sense, because I think I was probably on the smaller than average size. And so that's what worked, and that's what felt so much better. And so this whole thing was like a light bulb, like, wow, like this really matters. And one of the guys I was dating had joked, because I would say that I actually want someone who's like average or smaller than average. And he joked that if I had put that on my dating profile, like, give me a guy who with an average or smaller than average penis, I probably would have had guys lined up around the block. I didn't put that on my profile, but what I did do is I got really honest about size, because it matters. And I think, that was one of the things, like with Mr. Big, was why the hell aren't you saying that up front if you're having trouble, right, with fit? So what I want you to do is sort of think about, what size are you? If you're with a partner, what size are they, and what works with the fit? And now, the idea here isn't that you can't have satisfying sex. Kama Sutra is talking about like the ultimate sexual experience comes from fit, but we're creative creatures. So it might also mean that if the fit isn't perfect, that you need some workarounds, or you need to be aware of that, or just pay attention to make things work better. And there's a lot that can be done for that. So with that, I'm going to leave you to think about size and fit in this whole new way. And I hope that it can help you if you're looking for someone, it can help you be more honest in the questions you need to ask and what you need to share about yourself, but can also help you make sex more enjoyable and see how the fit is with you and any current partners. So thank you again for being here. Please check out my Instagram, let's talk about sex_really, and share this with anyone who you think might enjoy it, benefit from it, or just to get people talking more about it. Look forward to next time when I will be talking more about sex, really.